Wounded and medically needy Gazans arrive for treatment in Egypt. Trump announces broad tariffs on Canada, Mexico, China. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for tuning in. You're watching World Today with me, Daniel Bahardin. The Health Ministry in Hamas-run Gaza said 50 Palestinian patients, including 30 children with cancer, went through the Rafah crossing to Egypt on Saturday as the key gateway reopened as part of a ceasefire deal. Egyptian state-linked channel Al Qahira News showed footage of the first 50 evacuees, including a child with an autoimmune disease, and their 53 companions crossing the border into Egypt to receive treatment. The director of Gaza Hospitals, Muhammad Zakud, said currently they have 6,000 cases ready to be transferred and more than 12,000 cases that are in dire need of treatment. According to the Egyptian Red Crescent, 30 ambulances equipped with medical supplies have been stationed in Egypt to transport patients to hospitals in Sheikh Zayed, Arish and Suez. Some patients will be sent to the capital, Cairo, after their condition is assessed. Patients will be placed in orthopedic, burn treatment, general surgery and pediatric wards at designated hospitals for further treatment. The Rafah crossing had been closed since Israel seized its Palestinian side in May. A total of 32 Palestinian hostages were released from Israeli prisons in the fourth group as part of a prisoner exchange agreement between Israel and Hamas. They were handed over to the International Red Cross before being taken to hospitals in Ramallah for examination and treatment. Hundreds of Palestinians gathered around the Ramallah Cultural Palace to celebrate the return of the prisoners. Last Thursday, Israeli authorities released 110 prisoners from Offa prison in the occupied West Bank, including prominent former fighter commander Zakaria Zubeidi, 49, who was welcomed as a hero in Ramallah. A Hamas official and sources said that after today's hostage exchange, the second this week and the fourth since the ceasefire began, the main border between Rafah and Egypt in Gaza will be reopened. Negotiations are due to start by Tuesday on agreements for the release of the remaining hostages and the withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza in the second phase of the deal. Foreign ministers of 6 Arab countries have issued a joint statement rejecting the forced displacement of Palestinians from their land. The statement, released on Saturday, presented a unified stance against US President Donald Trump's call for Egypt and Jordan to take in Palestinians from Gaza. In a joint statement, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Egypt and the Palestinian Authority and the Arab League expressed full support for the steadfastness of the Palestinian people in their homeland, as well as their legitimate rights in accordance with international law. The participating countries emphasize their rejection of any violations of these inalienable rights, whether through settlement activities, expulsions, home demolitions, land confiscations, or the forced displacement of Palestinians in any form or for any reason. According to the statement, such plans threaten the stability of the region, risk escalating the conflict, and undermine the prospects for peace and coexistence among its inhabitants. United States President Donald Trump announced broad tariffs Saturday on major U.S. trading partners, Canada, Mexico and China, invoking emergency economic powers to do so while citing a major threat from illegal immigration and drugs. Canadian and Mexican exports to the U.S. will face a 25% tariff, although energy resources from Canada will have a lower 10% levy, with duties starting as soon as Tuesday. Goods from China, which already face various rates of duties, will see an additional 10% tariff. Trump invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act in imposing the tariffs, with the White House saying the threat posed by illegal aliens and drugs, including deadly fentanyl, constitutes a national emergency. The White House added that the aim is to hold all three countries accountable to their promises of halting illegal immigration and stopping poisonous fentanyl and other drugs from flowing into the U.S. The announcement threatens upheaval across supply chains, from energy to automobiles to food. Trump has repeatedly expressed his love for tariffs and has signaled that Saturday's action could be the first volley in further trade conflicts to come. This week, he pledged to impose duties on the European Union in the future. Looking to rebuild after the party's election loss to Donald Trump in November, the United States Democratic National Committee on Saturday elected Ken Martin, the leader of the state party in Minnesota, as its new chair. Martin will be tasked with reversing the fortunes of a bruised and demoralized Democratic Party that not only lost control of the White House last November, but failed to win either chamber of Congress. Since then, the rulerless party has struggled to respond to Republican Trump's barrage of executive orders, many of which reverse former President Joe Biden's policies.
We have one fight. The fight's not in here. The fight's out there, right? The fight's not in here. The fight is for our values. The fight is for working people. The fight right now is against Donald Trump and the billionaires who bought this country. That's the fight, not in here.
A long-time Democratic strategist in Minnesota, Martin had called for restoring and augmenting the party's national infrastructure in order to contest races across the country. He beat out Wisconsin Democratic Chair Ben Winkler in the first ballot. A Russian missile slammed into an apartment building in central Ukraine's Poltava in the early hours of Saturday morning, killing at least 4 people and injuring at least 15, including 3 children. Ukrainian officials said it was just one of the cities hit by Russia's barrage of drones and missiles on Saturday, killing at least 8 people and damaging dozens of residential buildings and energy infrastructure across the country. City authorities in Poltava, around 120 kilometers from the Russian border, said about 18 apartment buildings, a kindergarten, and energy infrastructure were damaged. 1 person was killed and 4 were wounded in the city of Kharkiv in the northeast in a drone attack. 3 police officers were killed during the attacks as they patrolled streets in a village in the northeastern region of Sumy. Ukrainian officials said the city of Zaporizhia in the southeast and the Khmelnytsky region in the west were also hit. Moscow's strikes in the morning hours on Saturday followed a Russian missile attack on the southern Black Sea port of Odessa the previous evening, which damaged the city's historic center. Death toll from Philadelphia plane crash rises to 7. That and more coming up next. The death toll from the crash of a medical jet carrying a Mexican child home from a hospital in Philadelphia has risen to 7, officials said Saturday, with 19 others injured. The crash, the second major aviation disaster in the United States this week, occurred Friday when the twin-engine Learjet 55 plummeted towards a busy Philadelphia neighborhood, exploding on impact and showering wreckage over homes and vehicles. Officials had earlier stated that all 6 on board, a young girl who had been in the United States for medical care, her mother and members of the flight and medical crews with her were killed. They were all Mexican nationals.
So I want to stress this was a high-impact crash, and the plane is highly fragmented. There is a substantial impact on the entire community. The debris field extends 4 or 5 blocks. And I do want to stress that this is an active investigation scene. The debris is scattered. It is very dangerous. I do want to mention we are still looking for the cockpit voice recorder. We have located the two engines, but for the cockpit voice recorder, we are still looking for it. It could be intact, but likely it is damaged. It may be fragmented.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Federal Aviation Authority said it was launching an investigation with the National Transportation Safety Board. Both agencies are already probing the deadliest U.S. air disaster in almost a quarter century after a passenger jet operated by an American airline subsidiary collided with a Black Hawk helicopter on Wednesday. On another matter, officials on Saturday said at a news briefing that investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board (NTSB) have determined the CRJ700 airplane was at 91 meters at the time of impact. The information was based on data recovered from the jet's flight data recorder, the black box that tracks the aircraft's movements, speed and other parameters. The new digital detail suggests the Army helicopter was flying above 61 meters, the maximum altitude for the route it was using. Preliminary data indicates the control tower's radar showed the helicopter at 200 feet at the time of the accident, though officials said the information has not been confirmed.
As previously stated, we know that the FDR and data provided indicated that the CRJ was at 325 feet, plus or minus 25 feet. We also, initial preliminary data right now indicates that on the tower's radar scope that was available to the controller, initial data indicates that he may have seen 200 feet. That needs to be verified. Our ATC group is working it. We will have more data available, but those are the initial indications.
Data confirms that the air traffic controller alerted the helicopter to the presence of the CRJ700 about 2 minutes before the crash. Meanwhile, the official highlighted an automated radio transmission alerted traffic was heard on the voice recorder, and then sounds of the collision were heard before the recording ends. The Eaton fire that scorched more than 57 square kilometers east of Los Angeles has been 100% contained. The California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection announced the larger Palisades fire, which has consumed 95 square kilometers on the west side of Los Angeles, was also now 100% contained. Long overdue rain reached Southern California in the past week, helping firefighters contain the fires while also increasing the danger of flash floods and mudslides in the denuded hills and the spread of toxic material left in the fire's devastation. The firefighters official confirmed the two major fires, plus several smaller ones, created the worst natural disaster in Los Angeles County history, killing 28 people and damaging and destroying more than 16,000 structures. Around 180,000 people were under evacuation orders. Damage and economic losses were projected at more than $250 billion. Containment measures the percentage of a fire's perimeter that firefighters have under control, with confidence that those lines can be maintained. India slashed personal tax rates in its annual budget on Saturday as the world's fifth largest economy focuses on boosting domestic demand amid uncertainty over the global economic outlook due to potential new tariff barriers. The government said people earning up to 1.28 million Indian rupees per year will not have to pay any taxes, raising its threshold from 700,000 rupees. It also lowered tax rates for people earning above the new threshold. The move will result in an annual 1 trillion Indian rupee hit to treasury revenues. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said in a parliament that measures to assist the poor, youth, farmers and women were also included in the budget for 2025 to 2026. Increasing living costs have weighed on the popularity of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, with one survey showing more Indians are becoming less hopeful about their quality of life. India has long aimed to boost the share of manufacturing and exports in its economy, but has had little success. The share of manufacturing in the economy has remained close to 17%, short of its long-standing goal of 25%. The naval arm of Iran's Revolutionary Guards unveiled a new underground missile facility on the south coast in footage aired by state television Saturday, 2 weeks after unveiling an underground naval base. The Guards also described the hundreds of cruise missiles capable of countering enemy destroyers' electronic warfare are stationed in these underground cities. The local media reported the missile systems are being kept hundreds of meters underground and can be operational in a very short time. It's said without giving an exact location of the base. These systems and missiles can be armed and fired from hundreds of kilometers away and can hit targets far out at sea. In the footage aired by Iran state television, Guards Chief General Hussein Salami is seen toward the base with Naval Arm Commander Rear Admiral Ali Reza Tangsiri. The video also unveiled a new model of cruise missile dubbed Ghadar 380, which Tangsiri said had anti-jamming capabilities and a range of more than 1,000 kilometers. Last month, the Guards unveiled an underground naval base for assault boats operating in Iran's southern waters, which include the Gulf and the strategic Strait of Hormuz. Horst Kohler, former German president from 2004 to 2010 and a respected global policy maker with a particular interest in Africa, died on Saturday after a short illness at the age of 81. Born in 1943 in German-occupied Poland, Kohler spent most of his early years living in refugee camps with his family before settling in Ludwigsburg, Baden-Württemberg. A trained economist and member of the Christian Democrats, Kohler rose to the position of Deputy Finance Minister under ex-Chancellor Helmut Kohl, playing a key role in bringing the West German mark to East Germany after communist rule collapsed in 1990. Kohler became managing director of the International Monetary Fund in 2000, a post he held for 4 years before being nominated for president in 2004. As president, he was not afraid to defy the government, dissolving parliament in 2005 to call new elections and accusing then-Chancellor Angela Merkel in 2007 of not preparing the country sufficiently for globalization. Despite being a largely unknown figure before assuming the presidency, Kohler quickly proved himself in opinion polls to be one of Germany's most popular political figures. Still to come in sports, Nottingham Forest feasts on goals at Brighton. Stay tuned. We begin with updates on football, the English Premier League. Nottingham Forest's Chris Wood netted a hat-trick in a ruthless Brighton beatdown that ended an astonishing 7-0 earlier this morning. The win allowed Forest to move level on points with Arsenal thanks to a scintillating performance that blew Brighton away at the City ground. Morgan Gibbs-White, Neco Williams and Jota Silva were also on target for Forest after Lewis Dunk's own goal opened the floodgates. The two-time European champions are on course for a place in the Champions League as they open up a 6-point cushion on 5th place Newcastle. The last time Forest entered the European competition was back in 1996. Meanwhile, Mohamed Salah scored twice to take Liverpool 9 points, clear at the top of the Premier League by beating Bournemouth 2-0. Salah's double took him above Frank Lampard as the 6th highest goal scorer in Premier League history, with 178 goals on another significant day in the Reds' charge towards a record equalling 20th English top flight title. Bournemouth had not lost in 12 games in all competitions and beaten Arsenal and Manchester City at home earlier this season, but the Reds proved too much for the Cherries to handle. Top seed Andrei Rublev was eliminated by qualifier Alexander Kovacevic in their semi-final at the Open Occitane in Montpellier on Saturday. Kovacevic, ranked 102 in the world going into the tournament, continued his fantastic form in Montpellier with a straight set 7-5, 6-4 win over the Russian world number 10. The American fired 9 aces and converted 3 of 5 breakpoint opportunities to win in just over an hour and a half. The American moved a breakup early on to get off to the perfect start. The second set was close, but the more experienced Russian was left to rue unconverted breakpoints late in the set before Kovacevic delivered the sucker punch to hold serve and break in the next game. With the win, the American booked a spot in the final against Felix Auger-Aliassime, who won the earlier semi. Auger-Aliassime leads all ATP players with 52 indoor match wins since the start of 2022. He has also won 14 consecutive matches against players ranked outside of the top 100. Auger-Aliassime had defeated Kovacevic in their only previous meeting. Meanwhile, in women's tennis, Diana Yastremska of Ukraine moved into her first WTA singles final in nearly 3 years with a 6-1, 6-4 semi-final victory over Clara Tauson of Denmark at the Upper Austria Ladies Linz on Saturday. Yastremska will next face Ekaterina Alexandrova in Sunday's final at the WTA 500 indoor hardcourt event, who earlier number 1 seed Karolina Muchova. Yastremska needed 1 hour and 48 minutes to notch her second top 50 win in a row, having already beaten Maria Sakkari in Friday's quarterfinals. Yastremska now holds a 2-0 record against Tauson. The Ukrainian will contest her first final since finishing runner-up to Zhang Shuai at another indoor hardcourt event, Lyon, in March of 2022. She is aiming for her first title since triumphing on the clay of Strasbourg in 2019. On the other hand, despite the result, Tauson is still having a strong season. The Dane is 10-2 on the year, having started 2025 by winning the Auckland title. Tauson is also the only player to defeat Madison Keys so far this year, having ousted the newest Grand Slam champion during her Auckland run. Niagara Falls covered in ice as severe cold weather hits. That's next and more in our Offbeat segment. Niagara Falls, the famed tourist destination, was shrouded in a dense layer of snow and ice on Wednesday as severe cold weather conditions hit. The iconic landmark and its surroundings were seen heavily laden with snow and ice, with the distant Rainbow Bridge arching over the frozen Niagara River. Tourists at the site were fascinated by the extraordinary spectacle.
I am quite shocked that it's all frozen today, because yesterday when we arrived, we still have some water flow in between, but it's still so interesting to see such a scenario. It's just like frozen in time.
Before I come to here Niagara Falls, I never think that it would be frozen. But when I come here, I saw the lake is frozen. I think it's amazing. I'm not sure whether it's about the climate change and make the weather be really extreme cold.
The snow-draped landscape encompassing the Table Rock Welcome Center and observation decks presented a remarkable and unique view of the falls, augmenting the charm of this winter wonderland. Colourful hot air balloons dotted the cloudy sky above the Swiss alpine town of Château-d'Aix on Thursday during the 45th edition of its annual festival. The 9-day celebration will end on Sunday and is bringing together 65 pilots from various countries. Pilot Max Duncombe, who has accumulated more than 3,000 flight hours in 32 different countries, said that every flight is different, but flying in the Swiss Alps is special.
It was the first place in the pre-Alps that balloons were flying, and they found that because it has its own little microclimate, it's a stable area for balloons to fly.
Located in an alpine valley, the Château-d'Aix is renowned for winds that make for particularly good flights. The festival, created in 1979, features hot air balloons in special shapes, as well as air displays, demonstrations, a night show, and other activities for families. A streamlined Mercedes race by Formula One greats Stirling Moss and Juan Manuel Fangio in 1955 set a record for a Grand Prix car on Saturday, selling at auction for $53.01 million. The sleek silver W196Rs from Linienwagen, one of the only 4 complete examples in existence, was sold by RM Sotheby's at the Mercedes Museum in Stuttgart, Germany, on behalf of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The IMS car is the first W196R to become available for private ownership with the streamlined body fitted. The final price includes the buyer's premium. The buyer was not immediately named. The car was driven to victory by 5-time world champion Fangio at the non-championship Buenos Aires Grand Prix in 1955, but with a more conventional cigar-shaped body on the same chassis and fully open wheels. The car sold on Saturday with a chassis number 00000954 was donated by the IMS by Mercedes in 1965, and it was auctioned to raise funds for the museum's restoration efforts. That wraps up World Today this time around. In our top story, wounded and medically needy Gazans arrive for treatment in Egypt. I'm Daniel Bahardin. Thank you for watching. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Assalamualaikum, salam Malaysia Madani.